Recording. Hi, this is Scott Silverman on behalf of the Florida Atlantic chapter of the NCGR. And we're fortunate today to have April Elliott Kent here to tell us a little about her forthcoming workshop that will be January 15th, 2022. And let's see if I can pull up the announcement so I don't have to massacre the internet address. Here we go. Saturday, January 15th, 12 noon to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. April Elliott Kent on how to make 2022 your year. Wow. I won't say that next remark. It's tasteless.
I know just what you're thinking.
So we have the address. For those of you who need to go to the website, is https://astrology.fla.com/event/April-Elliott-Kent-year ahead/. All right, good. I'm glad that's over with. All right, first things first, April, where and when were you born?
I was born on August 5th, 1961 in Evansville, Indiana.
And let's see, would that be the chart in question on the screen?
Oh my gosh, how'd you get my chart? Yes.
I have my ways. Actually, you gave it to me last week.
Oh, okay. Oh, wait, no, that's not me. That's 1962.
Oh, so you don't have Jupiter in Pisces, no Jupiter return.
I sure don't.
Okay, let's edit this and change it. What is the proper year?
61.
61.
It was kind of you to try to make me a year younger, but.
Well, you gotta be careful with 1962. All those Aquarius planets earlier in the year. So.
I was born the day after Barack Obama, in fact.
Really?
Yes, he was born in the morning or something. No, 5 o'clock in the evening on the 4th, and yeah. So
does this look more like you?
That's me.
All right, look at that. Look at that Jupiter at 0 Aquarius.
I had my Jupiter
conjunction hit that pretty right on. Care to share a true life astrological adventure when you had Jupiter Saturn on your Jupiter?
Well. So Jupiter and Saturn, as you see, I have them together in my birth chart, which is really good news for Saturn and not such great news for Jupiter, right? Because Jupiter never gets to just be Jupiter without Saturn hanging around there. And Saturn rules my Jupiter. So it kind of like was an underwhelming Jupiter return with having Saturn there as well. So I don't know. I think with those big planetary combinations that come together, you don't necessarily see exactly what they're going to bring for you for a while. And I think as Jupiter's starting to go into Pisces, maybe I'll begin to see more of what that was. But yeah, so I've had my Jupiter return. That's always kind of a fun thing. But yeah, the Pluto on the Saturn has been so heavy and such a bummer for so long.
Wow, you have my astrological condolences here.
Yeah,
it's really better. I'm having an eclipse on my sun, April 30th. So
you step up to be the king of your kingdom. I don't think eclipses to the sun have to be bad at all, but it's pressure, it's planetary pressure. So yeah, it really has been that Pluto with Saturn has been the big story of my year. It's been pretty tough. So that's when and where I was born.
All right. And that data again, just quickly.
Oh, August 5th, 1961 at 3:01 p.m. in Evansville, Indiana.
All right, great. Now, when did you decide to go pro, as we say in red light districts around the world, and start charging for your readings?
I looked this up. I did my first paid reading in January of 1990 when Venus was retrograde in Capricorn. So it took me a very long time to make money doing readings for people. And I just realized that. And yeah, of course, we're having Venus retrograde right now in Capricorn as we speak. And then I left my day job 3 days before my 30th birthday.
What was your day job?
I was an executive secretary for a major water utility in Los Angeles. And I was making really good money and I'd gone almost as far as I could go. And at that time, I hadn't finished my degree. So there was this glass ceiling. I couldn't really progress much in the company. And then I fell in love with astrology and had an encouraging teacher. So way before I was ready, I took the leap of faith to go out to be an astrologer. And that's pretty much what I've done ever since. I did have a couple of little admin jobs here and there early on. But yeah,
Well, that makes you a success in the world of astrology then. Tell us a little bit more about your educational background in astrology. Who was your first and best astrology teacher? And they may not be the same person.
I mean, really, to be completely honest with you, my only astrology teacher in terms of formally sitting in classes was Diane Rongren. She was in Los Angeles and she was an NCGR, level 4 and all of that. Excellent astrologer, really fascinating person. Sadly, we lost her at the end of 2020, but she was an outstanding teacher. And I feel really fortunate I got to study with her because she exposes to a little bit of everything. So there's almost nothing to this day that somebody can bring up that I'm at least not familiar with.
I haven't. Is that a challenge to me?
Well, yeah. I mean, no, I'm not going to say I'm an expert in any of those things. It's just I've heard of them. At least I'm familiar with them. If I want to know more,
exactly,
I know how to go about it.
You got a broad grounding in technique and practice.
Yeah, it was general ed, basically.
Do you have favorite texts, videos, or recorded body of teachings that still do it for you from anybody?
Well, so the books that I always have on hand close to my to my desk are, I love Sue Tompkins' book on aspects.
It's a great book.
I love all of Stephen Forrest's books. I really resonate with his approach. I have Bernadette Brady's Predictive Astrology, The Eagle and the Lark. I have Rex Bill's Rulership book. Those are like my core texts.
Okay, here's an important and leading question.
Yeah.
Do you use traditional or modern rulerships in your work?
I use both.
Excellent answer.
More and more, I really rely on the traditional rulerships. If I'm looking for rulers of houses, for instance, I'm always going to use the traditional rulers. I'll tell you what, Scott, I still, when I'm talking with my clients, I still hear the modern rulerships. So I use both, but I rely more on the traditional ones.
All right. What's your way of thinking is the purpose of astrology?
Purpose of astrology, I would say, to see how we're connected with the universe, to see how we're connected with all things. We like to have that sense, I think, or maybe it's just me because I've got everything in the ninth house. But I think why we love astrology is it makes us feel connected to something bigger than ourselves. And when you talk with your clients, you can sort of see it in their eyes when you're talking to them. And the thing that they will say over and over again is, that is so validating. And it is. It's like to hear that there's something outside of you that objectively says, here's something about your path. Here's something about the way you're wired. So
your
powerful.
Experience. Right.
Yeah, so powerful.
It truly is.
Mm-hmm.
You've given some very engaging talks in the past. Can you share with us the gist of your Saturn and relationships talk? Let's pretend you're giving one of those elevator speeches. And by the way, I mean the lecture that had lots of images from the old Howard Hawks movie, Bringing Up Baby. I don't know if I got the title right.
You always remember that one. Yeah. So I actually don't practice relationship astrology with clients, but I'm endlessly fascinated in it as a research topic. And I end up developing a lot of talks about relationship astrology. The Saturn one was a strict synastry approach. It was, what does it mean? What does it feel like if one person's Saturn's connecting with another person's whatever, Mars, Venus, Sun, and the ways in which Saturn and relationship either help us grow or make us feel blocked.
Thank you.
Simple as that. I love Saturn. I love relationships. It was a natural match.
What are some of your other topics of concern in astrology so far as research goes?
Well, like I say, I do a lot of relationship stuff, timing stuff, but really I love to talk about lunar cycles. I love to talk about eclipses. Eclipses are my big fascination and my big thrill in astrology, actually. I love the Sabian symbols. And when I started out, they meant nothing to me. And then I was lucky enough to have Linda Hill come stay at my house for a week one time and just sort of talk to me about them. And it gave me a whole different way of looking at them and working with them. So now I find them really powerful and really evocative. Some days I'll look at when it means nothing to me, but another day I can look at it and wow, fireworks go off. So I would say those are the ones I'm working with a lot these days.
Well, I know there's really some fascinating new stuff being done with Sabian symbols. And when I'm allowed to, I'll tell you about it.
Oh, great.
What stands out for you as the best versus the most problematic features of your personal chart, your birth chart? You know, that time-worn image of your horoscope that you've been lugging around in your mind's eye for decades?
So if I had it to do over, I would not give myself a moon Pluto square. That's very miserable. And I don't love Saturn in the second house, but he's got to be somewhere. So those are the tough ones. The good ones, I really like my Mercury trine to the ascendant. It's always been easy for me to write, to talk to people, to get up on a stage and communicate. So I really like that. And I do love my Venus Neptune trine. It's very artistic and creative and all of that. So I like that. I might not have chosen to have Mars and Pluto flanking my midheaven either. That one's not been great.
That's about planning, isn't it? So.
Well, I'm kind of planning. I mean, Mars is trying my Saturn, which I love. It is very organized. I can get things done. But Mars so close to the midheaven or Pluto, either one I find can really get people angry at you without you even trying.
Do you find you found yourself in professional battles or conflicts, particularly when, say, you were on an astrological board?
When I've been on a board, which has not been much, I was the president of the San Diego Astrological Society for about 4 years. There didn't tend to be a lot of conflicts because I was in charge. So it's for Leo, it's always better to be in charge. So that was okay. I think I was on the AFAN steering committee for a few years. And I mean, that was fine. So it's less about that kind of thing. It is, I will tend to speak my mind in sort of no uncertain terms. And especially if I feel pushed at or provoked. So the more I've got a hot temper, unfortunately.
Well,
yeah.
This makes you fit right in with the Florida group. We like
really?
to speak their minds, who don't look back, right, Mimi?
I've always liked your group, so maybe that's why. You're my people.
Do you still remember how to hand cast a chart? And under what circumstances would you do so?
I mean, I know how. I can't do it off the top of my head anymore. There was a time I could sit down, no notes or anything, do it in 10 minutes. That, it's been a long time since I did it, but I could get back up to speed pretty quickly. And I could certainly do it with a checklist. Because when I very first started out, that's what you had to do. I was in my teens and had to sort of learn how to do that. The circumstances under which I would do it, either to prove to myself I still could, because I was going to teach somebody else how to do it, or because I wanted to sit for an exam, and I haven't done that yet. So, but those are the circumstances. Or, the power goes out. What are you going to do? You got to prepare for a client, what are you going to do?
I have this image of having to hand cast a chart by candlelight if society suddenly ends, so.
Right. Yeah, it's good to know how to do it. Plus, it takes you into the chart in a different way. You spend more time with it, looking at every element of it. And now I still have little processes that I do to get into the chart in that way. But when you cast the chart by hand, you don't so much have to.
The work starts before you start doing the work. You internalize it, right?
Yeah.
An interior process.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about being a part of the astro environment of San Diego. How did being part of a supportive group, if that was indeed your experience, influence your personal practice?
I don't know if it did. I will say the SDAS group was the first group that invited me to speak for them back in 1999. And that was a huge sea change for me professionally to be, invited to do that. Got my feet wet with that. I did study that in school. That was my major, was communication. So that was very supportive. And the reason I ever volunteered to be on that board was because they had been so supportive of me. They'd had me speak over the years, and they were always really kind to me. So from that point of view, in terms of professionalism, I think it was a really important experience to lead that group, even just to be on the board before I was the president.
And I think you get exposed to a lot of visiting astrologers and speakers, and you kind of get steeped in the art.
Well, you do. And that part was interesting, and the networking part of it. And that was true in AFAN as well, because I was doing a lot of online events, where I was talking to people and things like that. And that was really great. So I would say it had a professional impact. I think it had less of an impact on my personal practice.
Right. Well, again, it's interesting. During this COVID crisis, everything has moved online. And while it's wonderful to have online communities and interact, there is there's a difference. Yeah.
There's a big difference.
Big difference.
And I love that I get to speak for your group, because it's a huge challenge for me to get from San Diego to where you are. So it's nice that I'm able to do it this way. But yeah, gosh, I miss speaking for live groups. You get that energy back.
Exactly.
You get the hug, afterward. It's a really different experience.
On the other hand, everyone has a front row seat at your lecture when you're doing an online webinar. So
Exactly.
That at least is a benefit. Do either you or your partner use astrolocality techniques to choose San Diego as your place of residence?
No, not even a little. He's from New Zealand, and he came over here on a work visa. And at the time, he was working for a particular organization, a startup, and that's the only company he could work for. And they had moved to San Diego. And so that's when we got married. That's where I ended up. Now, it's not that different from Los Angeles for me in terms of astrolocality. It's pretty close. What it does is shift. I get the sun on the midheaven and Neptune rising. And in Los Angeles, it's very exact. In San Diego, the sun goes back into the ninth a little. Neptune goes back into the 12th a little bit. And it's less pressure somehow.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. I mean, actually, yeah, it does sound more restful having the changes to 9 and 12.
Definitely.
What's going on in your chart during the day of your workshop for our group? Is there anything notable or interesting happening in your chart?
I looked this up.
Your cautious astro assessment of the day has convinced you something's going on, like an asteroid is going to hit the Earth. Well, please be advised that our group would rather not know about it.
So here's what's happening, because I looked it up. Transiting Saturn will exactly be opposed my sun. And the transiting sun is exactly conjunct my Saturn.
Wow.
So the only one.
Are you sure you want to go forward with the talk?
I say the only one getting hit by an asteroid is me on that day. There's other stuff too. I've been having Neptune oppose Mars, and Mars is square my Mars and stuff. But those were the two that sort of made me laugh when I saw it. Lots of Saturn for me at the moment, and Pluto on my Saturn. And
well, I'm guessing you're doing a lot of preparation for the talk.
You know me. Yeah, I'm doing a ton, and I always feel like it's not enough. And yeah, so that's in fact what I'm doing today after we're finished with this.
Okay, here's the scenario. You're stuck in an airport lounge because your plane's takeoff has been delayed by a solar flare. You have your trustiest phone app, half an hour, and there's a not so innocent bystander armed with a more or less accurate birth time, thanks to an eagle-eyed grandmother, who desperately begs you to have a look at their chart. Where will you go in the process of your airport astrological delineation, knowing you have a half hour?
Well, first of all, it depends on my mood, and it depends on why they're begging. If they're begging because they're just generally interested, they think it's fascinating, I'll crack out the app, I'll put it up, I'll talk to them about their sun and moon a little bit. I'll keep it light, If it's something serious, I'm giving them my card and I'm saying, make an appointment, because it's not just about trying to get money out of them. It's about, look, let's honor this issue. If it's important enough for you to be begging me about it, it's important for us to do it properly and not sitting in an airport lounge with no preparation. Right?
Great answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
Whose work among contemporary practitioners of astrology particularly resonates with you?
If I were at a conference, I would never miss a lecture by Stephen Forrest or Lynn Bell.
Okay.
I love Dana Gerhardt, an old friend of mine. She used to write for the Mountain Astrologer for years. She's still very active as an astrologer.
Didn't she used to do a moon column?
She did, yeah. And
yeah, I remember that. It was great.
She is one of our very best astrology writers, and people can still read all of those old articles from TMA on astro.com. She's a featured columnist there now. I actually really like Jason Hawley, who's a younger astrologer. I think he's in New Mexico, or he was.
I'm not familiar with his work.
Well, I heard him at the last UAC, and his approach really, really excited me. He was the one speaker that I saw at UAC that really made me go, wow. So his stuff is wonderful. I don't know Frank Clifford. I'm not super familiar with his work, but we often seem to have the same take on things. I'll say something to someone, they'll say, oh yeah, Frank Clifford said something like that. And I've read some of his articles and his columns and heard him do a couple of talks. I'm like, yeah, yes, and yes. He's got a really practical approach, and I really resonate with that. So those are just some off the top of my head.
Well, that's pretty good off the top of your head. Well, that leads me to a question. What's your preferred house system of choice? Because I know Frank is an advocate of equal houses.
I don't do that. I do. Now, if somebody doesn't have a birth time, I'll usually use solar houses, which is a variation of equal houses, where the degree of the sun is on every house cusp. But no, Coke is my go-to. I came up in the late 80s. Coke then was what Whole Signs is now. Everybody was using it. My teacher used it. And so I've never felt a compelling need to change it, but I always give my clients the option, because my feeling with house systems is they're hypothetical. Only the horizon is a really fixed point.
So if you have a younger client, a Uranus Neptune child from the early 90s that really insists on whole sign houses, you don't have an issue.
I'll use it, but I keep their chart in Coke next to me, because that floating midheaven kills me.
Do you remember the tagline, things go better with Coke?
I do. And definitely with the house systems concerned. Of course, there's not a big difference between Coke and Placidus. A lot of people want to use Placidus, so I don't mind. Whole signs, like I say, especially if somebody wants to talk about 10th house things, they want to talk about career or whatever. I just find it frustrating to kind of follow the midheaven. So I just have the two charts, but I'll use whatever somebody wants, because I think that a house system is like a lens on a camera, and they all take a picture of the same thing, and different things are going to pop. But if that's the lens they like, I'll use it.
You'll honor it. Well, and it's so funny, if you study Jyotish astrology at all, and you're in a group of Indian astrologers, if the speaker has a North Indian chart up, someone will invariably ask, could you please put that chart up in a South Indian format, and vice versa. So at least it seems to me that's the big, that's the Indian version of the American fixation on house systems. Isn't
it an interesting thing? And I'm not quite sure why it is.
Pattern recognition, what we get used to, I think.
Yeah, how it looks right to you, how it looks good. And that's why I don't mind using somebody else's system if they're used to looking at it that way.
I'd love to give a lecture someday in defense of Coke, right?
Well, I don't know that I would, because I don't feel that attached to it on philosophical grounds. I like the way my chart looks in it. And I'll tell you, Scott, I've got a spreadsheet on my desktop that has my house cusps in about 4 different house systems. When something big happens, I take a look at each of them. I note, is something happening there? Not one of them is 100%.
I know exactly what you mean.
I keep looking for the perfect one. It doesn't exist, I think. So yeah, with house, I mean, a long answer to your short question, but
And as you say, house cusps are kind of imaginal anyway. I mean,
yeah,
you can get away with doing just the quadrants, the 4 quadrants, and what's anywhere.
yeah, yeah.
All right, here's a little question for you. What astrological organizations do you currently belong to or endorse? And do you actually read their journals? And no particular reason for asking.
I belong to OPA. I do like their journal a lot. I'm a member of ESAR. I really value their tremendous library that's available to their members of past conference recordings, of journal articles, all of that. NCGR, I am a member. I think I'm still a member of AFAM, but this made me think, oh, I better check with them and see if my membership's up to date. I have
which organization? I'm sorry.
AFAM.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. SDAS, of course, Arizona Astrologers, Tucson Astrology Guild. I keep up with those local groups. And yeah, in terms of journals, I know I always read OPAs because I'm really fascinated in the profession of astrology. At this point, I'll read something if I really like the writer or I'm really fascinated by the specific topic. But overall, I'm bad. I don't read a lot of the journals.
It's a time thing. And then we have the world's biggest journal called the internet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Waiting for us and mocking us. You still haven't visited this site. You haven't read me yet. I remember being so impressed by a talk you gave on marriage timing that was quite a while ago. And you gifted attendees with the equivalent of like a 90-page ebook on that topic. Do you remember this?
I do. Yeah, that was my first UAC talk ever in 2012.
Right. I was there. Is that ebook still in print and currently available for purchase or download? I thought it was quite well done.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's essentially the text of the whole talk, really. You can get it on Amazon. It's called When Will I Get Married? When Will I Get Married?
Yes.
And people can find it by they can just Google my name and it'll come up as one of my books. It's like $6. It's not a big investment. Go for it. I have some hard copies, and if I'm out lecturing in person, I have them for sale.
I might get me one of those sometime.
Yeah. Well, give me your info. I'll send you one.
What new projects or books are you working on? And if sharing the details endangers our national security in any way, we especially want to know.
Yeah, that's right. I'm focusing on teaching courses. So the next big thing is working on my forecasting course, forecasting with transits and secondary progressions. So that's starting up the end of February. I did one last year on kind of intermediate astrology, and teaching online, kind of challenging, a lot of technological hurdles I had to overcome. So it takes a lot of time. So that's where I'm focused really for this year. I have 2 books in me that I want to write, but I don't know when I'm going to get to write them because I'm busy, and I can't afford to do without the money and take the time off to write the books. So yeah, I was lucky 3 times that I was approached to write books for publishers, and they gave me advances, and that makes it possible to take the time off to write. But nothing like that coming up anytime soon. Mostly courses.
Where can people get information on your forecasting course? They should go to your website, Big Sky.
Yeah, bigskyAstrology.com. I don't have anything up there about it right now. If they get on my mailing list, just go to bigskyAstrology.com. There's a big form on the front page to sign up for my mailing list. And that's where I'll be giving all the details. And when it's all completely firmed up with the pricing and all that, I'll have it on my website.
Okay, great. Have you ever encountered a client whose chart was especially resistant to prediction?
No, I've met clients who themselves were resistant, or who I just didn't click with. But my feeling is, I'm not a perfect astrologer by any means, but I trust the symbols. If there's a symbol at work, I know it's happening somewhere for the person. Now, I might not have been able to figure out exactly what's going on, or to click with the astrologer and such the client in such a way that they can understand what I'm saying. But I know it's there. The chart's never resistant to prediction, but the client certainly can be.
I know I asked you earlier, but I thought I would ask you again in a slightly different way. What are your preferred forecasting techniques? Do you work with secondaries?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I use always secondaries and transits. I used to use solar arcs religiously. And I think my progress, I went into Libra, where it's in its fall. And suddenly I lost all interest with solar arc predictions. So yeah, it really was kind of interesting. I'll work with a solar return if the client specifically asks about it. And other kind of important return charts. But second, I've worked with lots of stuff over the years, but that's my little toolkit now. And that usually gets me where I need to go with the client.
Are there any current mundane or celestial configurations you're keeping a watchful eye on? For instance, while everyone's going on about the USA Pluto return, I'm more preoccupied with the USA Neptune opposition Neptune happening around the same time. What are you focused on, if there is any mundane thing out there in the sky?
Well, I am looking at both those things. And I would be curious what you're thinking about the Neptune opposition.
Well, I don't have anything I can say off the cuff right now, but I just can't seem to separate the Pluto return from it. They're like parallel energy streams.
Yeah, you can't really
separate. I think Gary Christian
them.
made a very good point, is it's very hard to even pinpoint something like a Pluto return, because we don't know to what extent the orbital elements have stayed the same over the last few hundred years.
Yeah, especially with Pluto. Yeah.
I've actually, a few people have gotten me working with the Sibley chart again, but I do tend to believe, like so many others, it's valid because it's a symbolic chart of America. I'm not sure it's the only chart we can use.
Oh, it's clearly not the only one, because so many people use so many different charts. So clearly there's an argument for a lot of charts.
Do you have a favorite?
I like the Sibley.
Yeah.
That Saturn-Pluto opposition on the horizon at 9/11, it just really kind of clinched it for me. And I'll be talking, in the workshop that I'm doing for you guys a little bit about the US Pluto return, but the way that I approached it was to look at what's happened at the critical points in the Pluto cycle, what's happened at the squares, what's happened at the opposition. And it's interesting stuff about power, about how power is used and expressed in our country. But Neptune is so important because it's about what we believe about ourselves as a country. That's what's being challenged. We previously had this same aspect a couple of years before the beginning of the Civil War. And Pluto had made its first square a few years before that. And we had the gold rush and, some interesting things. So it worries me. It worries me because there's no longer consensus about what the country means. What's our identity? What's our sense of ourselves as a nation? Growing up in the 60s, it was really clear. We were badass. We're walking on the moon. It was a sense of being a part of a very special country that stood for very specific things.
And I think that's part of what the Neptune opposition Neptune's about, basically.
Yeah, it's like, what's our dream? We have to dream a new dream. And the beginning part of that is disillusionment. And I think that's what the opposition's about. But look at the Civil War. Yes, it had a Plutonian underpinning, but it also had that Neptunian factor. What are our highest ideals? Is it more important that we make a lot of money off slave labor, or is it more important that each person is created equal? So this was a big fundamental, shift, something we really had to look at as a country. We didn't do a great job, and we never did a great job of healing after that. Reconstruction was horribly bungled. And so there's a lot of pain. There's a lot of outrage. There's a lot of hurt. That's got to be healed. We're not doing a good job of it. We're getting ready for another civil war. Hopefully not on a literal level, but ideologically.
We've been in kind of an ideological civil war now for a good 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
It will be looking forward to looking back at this period someday.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
resolved
gosh.
and nothing at all like the Matrix.
Right.
So
Exactly.
is
Yeah.
there anything folks planning on attending your workshop need to bring or do in preparation for attending your lecture?
At this point, I would say, well, they definitely need to have their chart with them. They would do well to have an ephemeris for this year. And if they have software, they can run their transits and progressions for the year, especially transits. And I'll have a little workbook, and we're going to work through a lot of these major patterns for the year and what it means for each person individually and in their individual chart. And a few other things too that are not involved in the lecture that just kind of I like playing with on a personal level each year. When I sit down between Christmas and New Year's and I look at my year astrologically, these are some of the things that I'm looking at.
Cool. Have you ever been chastised, ridiculed, or rebuffed by a total stranger? And Neil deGrasse Tyson doesn't count. Once they found out you were a professional astrologer?
Yes, of course. And I mean, I have very, religious people in my family. I married into a family of scientists and academics. So there's no safe place there for me.
Oh my God.
And any of their people that I meet. And I used to tiptoe around it. When you're younger, you're a little more insecure. You feel more like you've got to prove yourself or you're going to prove astrology. I don't feel that anymore. In 9 out of 10 situations, if somebody, asks what I do and I say I'm an astrologer and they look at me funny, I say, yeah, I know it's kind of a weird job. And I change the subject. It's, I'm not interested in hearing what they have to say if it's going to be negative. I'm not
heard it all already, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And with the religious people too, you're going to hell and whatever. So yeah, in short, yes, but now it's a fight that generally I choose not to fight. I don't find myself a really good advocate for astrology on that level.
You can always get the people who have religious objections, a copy of the Book of Enoch, the Lost Book of the Bible, lots of astrology in that.
Yeah.
I know when I feel I'm in a very hostile personal interaction, I've been known to tell people I'm a life coach, right?
Well, I
rather
say
than
I'm
an
a writer.
astrologer,
Yeah,
right?
I say I'm a writer, and that usually just, and they'll say, "What do you write?" I say, "Oh, books, articles."
Researcher
Yeah.
is really good.
When I'm not feeling confrontational, and that 1 out of 10 times, or I feel like it's just not a good idea, that's what I say. Said I'm a writer. It's not untrue.
Well, here's your follow-up bonus question. Has anyone ever mistaken you for a professional astronomer?
Yes.
Me too.
And I immediately disavow them of that when they point at something in the night sky. Oh, what's that? And I'm like, unless it's a planet, I don't usually know, or a few fixed stars. Yeah. So, but
I just love that I say astrologer and they hear astronomer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we used to get all kinds of emails to SDAS from people saying stuff like, oh, I have this old telescope that my father left behind. Do you guys want? I'm like, astrologers.
The answer is yes. There's an astrologer that wants that old telescope.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, right.
Give them my contact info.
There you go.
Right? Well, now here we are with our last little question. Have you ever presented any of your work in Paris?
I get it.
Love April in Paris.
I see what you did there. No, I'm afraid to go to Paris.
Pourquoi?
I don't speak any French. I'm a large lady, and I always think they're very slim and really snotty if you don't speak the language well.
It's the whole chic astrology thing you're worried
Exactly. But of course, I worship Lynn Bell, who is just like the epitome of a beautiful, chic, Parisian woman. No, I would love to do that someday, but it hasn't happened so far.
It just might if we're ever allowed to travel again, right?
Yeah. I got to Italy first.
Easily without too much hoopla.
Oh yeah, that's a long ways off, unfortunately. So
well, listen, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with our group, and we can't wait to have you on January 15th. And I think we've just about covered it all and then some. I'm going to get flack because this is a longer interview, but
Oh, it's my fault. Mercury opposed Jupiter. But thank you, Scott. I just love you, and I love speaking for your group, and we're gonna have fun.
and
So
I'm
thank
looking
you so
forward.
much.
I mean, your next book, whenever it comes out, looking forward to it. Are you still self-publishing, or are you looking for a publisher?
Well, I'm always open to a publisher, but if you want to do something that isn't real mainstream and sun sign oriented, it's really hard to find a publisher. You can do it. Christopher Renstrom had a beautiful book published
Who is?
last. Christopher Renstrom.
Oh, what's his new book? I didn't know
Yeah,
he had a new
it's
book.
a circle.
Can
Oh,
you pull it out from the bookshelf? Let's show
yeah.
them.
Hold on one second. Give him a little
How
push.
did I miss this one?
Oh, it's beautiful. And I think it's HarperCollins. It's the Cosmic Calendar.
Oh my
Oh.
God, I didn't know. I know, I mean, like,
There you
I'm
go.
waiting. Christopher's been doing phenomenal research for years on
Yeah.
colonial, early American astrology, and that's the book I'm waiting for. You hear me,
He's-
Christopher?
Wow,
Get it
he's
out there.
wonderful. But again, a mainstream publisher is not going to publish that.
That's an academic publisher. Fortunately, history of astrology has become a hot topic in history of science publishing and has been
Good.
for
Well, he'd be
like
just the
5 or 6
guy
years.
because he's a magnificent astrologer, terrific historian, wonderful speaker, great. He is the whole package. Christopher's great. So yeah, I have some books in mind. We'll get there at some point, maybe when I retire.
Right,
Like,
when
that'll happen.
when we die in the middle of a reading someday, right?
Exactly right.
That's
Yeah.
the retirement plan for most working
Right.
astrologers.
Oh, but here are my books. If anybody has not.
Oh yeah, but hold it with the camera.
Yeah.
The
That's
Essential Guide to Practical Astrology.
And that's my A to Z one. Just look for the cow. It's got a cow on there. There he is.
Oh my God, who's cow?
And I don't know. It's a
Ah.
stock image. But it said practical to me. And here's my transits book.
When did that come out? The
That
transit.
came out in 2015. And I like the book, but I don't like the cover. So I'm often guilty of not promoting my ugly child. But it's a book I like. So I'd recommend it to people. Thank you. We've gone way over. We don't want
Yes,
people
we
to yell
have.
at you.
And on that note, we'll say goodbye, and we'll see you next weekend.
Yes. Okay. Thanks, Scott.
All right, bye-bye now.
Okay,
Thank
bye-bye.